listeners. Welcome to a special Patreon episode of Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from its rich past. Today I'm with Heather Raish from the Amelia Earhart Birthplace Museum. Welcome, Heather. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad you came.
I have wanted to visit the museum for a really long time. I don't know why I just now came, but thank you for showing me around. This place is pretty cool, and I've really been fascinated by Amelia for a long time, so this is good to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, there's a lot to know.
So before we actually talk about Amelia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in retail. My family had furniture and gift shops when I originally, lived in Cameron, Missouri, and I never thought this would be where I end up, but I really love it.
Well, how did you end up working here?
I just started as a volunteer, and then I got more into it and reading more and researching, and then they asked me if I wanted to be an employed person instead of volunteer, and that's, I guess, the rest is history after that. And when Corona hit, I was the only person that wanted to continue to work. And I didn't realize that at the time, like a lot of people, you're probably thinking, oh, just going to last for a little bit here. And now we're extended going, I don't think this is ending.
Yeah, I definitely, when we went into lockdown, I was like, okay, I'm watching China. They've been dealing with this for 2-3 months. So we've got 2 or 3 months, by June 1st we'll be good. I wish I was right.
Yeah, me too.
Have you always been interested in history?
Actually, my sister was the one person that loved history. And I was fascinated by the stories she would tell, because I would listen and go, well, I didn't know that. And my love of books turned into loving history, because I just really love to learn. So those all went together.
Cool. So tell us about the museum. When did this start? When did it become a museum?
Well, they were starting things in 1984, and Dr. Brybeck, who was an ear, nose, and throat doctor, had the opportunity to purchase the home. And there's another home, Aviatrix home. Well, Mrs. Aviatrix kind of nudged him along and said, hey, you should buy that. And so he gave $100,000 as a grant money towards the home and gifted it to the 99s, the female pilot group. And Amelia was the first president of that group and helped form it.
Mm-hmm. So before it became a museum, what was going on with the house?
It had some other families that had purchased the home after the Otises, her grandparents, passed away. They had sold it, and eventually it came back. But
okay. So what kind of objects do you have in here?
Oh, you have all sorts of things. One of my favorite things is upstairs with a handkerchief. And the reason I love it is because Amelia helped design things, and she put her initials on there, AE. It has some swirls and clouds and plane. I like little things like that you're not expecting and go, oh my word, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. We have luggage, we have beautiful pictures, people that have made airplanes that have, smaller, of course, we don't have the big ones here. But there's just a lot of different things, and if you get to stay long enough, you really see them as you're walking through. Even a music box in the front room that's a huge music box, not the one that you think of when you have the little ballerina pop out, but a really large one.
Yeah, guys, when she says it's a huge one, it's a good, what did you say, 3 feet long maybe?
Yeah.
And it covers the whole tabletop?
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I guess that's part of loving history, as I love old things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I know in the parlor there you said it was period furniture. In each of the rooms, about how much of it is donations or period furniture versus things that the family actually owned?
The majority of it is period furniture. And they tried to replicate what was originally here when Amelia was here, which she was here from when she was 3 to 12 years old. But Amelia's sister came in and said, I think this is how things looked. Mm-hmm. And then the 99s went out and purchased, and they used part of that grant money to put things back to what it looked like when Amelia was here.
Okay. So her sister Muriel was involved in the creation of the museum?
Yes. Right.
Do you have other relatives of Amelia that pop in now and then?
Sometimes. Muriel, well, they were along the same, Muriel had 2 children, and so they were, occasionally those relatives would come into the festival.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll come back to the festival, guys, because I wanted to talk about that. So you said your favorite was the handkerchief. Do you have a least favorite object?
Least favorite. That's bad to say, but yes, upstairs there's kind of a weird little statue. And she's, I don't know, there's one with hair on it that between the two, when I think of them, I guess maybe I have 2 not so favorite.
I agree with her sentiment, guys. There's a Barbie doll down in the, what room is that actually? Is that the conservatory or the woman's, is the ladies' parlor?
Yeah, second parlor.
Okay, there's a Barbie doll of Amelia in the second parlor, and that's a very good likeness, not these statues. So, museum is closed because of coronavirus, but when it was open, what events or activities did they have?
Well, it actually just opened back up.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So, yeah, we're open on Fridays from 9 to 4 and Saturdays 10 to 4. But, we used to be open every day.
Even on Sundays?
Even on Sundays. Okay. So we were open 10 to 4 Monday through Saturday, and then 1 to 4 on Sunday. So when you think of that condensed time, we're only open about 15 hours versus I think it was 47 before during the week. So I feel bad when people call and say, are you open? And I have to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you ask me?
It's okay. Did you have events or activities?
Oh, yeah. We used to have all sorts of things like an aviation week, and we would do different challenges.
Yeah, so what was Aviation Week?
Aviation Week is that we do activities throughout the week. They would have, they have a Guinness World Record they were trying to beat this year, and they would put pink paper airplanes and have all these people holding them and take pictures. And we didn't beat the Guinness World Record, but it was still fun to do things like that. So there's a lot of different activities. Even we were trying to do things with the town and different themes that we do. And I think it's really important to have the town involved in things also. The library is great about it.
That was good.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, that's a good segue into the festival. So it was canceled this year. I was really disappointed.
Yeah.
Am I right in understanding that that was a fundraiser for a museum? Or
the festival?
Yeah.
You mean like on a yearly basis?
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, it might have started out that way, but it's really just getting people in town and celebrating Amelia too. That even our airport is an Amelia Earhart, name.
Mm-hmm.
The bridge is Amelia Earhart, and the brochure for it says everything Amelia.
Yeah, the town really seems to love her.
Yeah. So that just brings a lot of tourism to our town. and it's kind of like Christmas, but in July for us. Yeah.
So if it's no longer a fundraiser, what fundraisers would you have, or how is the museum funded?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that it's funded by is really admissions. And that's going to be down for sure. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that this year. People just don't want to venture out too far, which I found people that have lived here since the 1950s and have never been here. So that's one of my goals this year, is get local people to come in. You might not want to travel, far off, but here we are, and a lot of our town has never been here. Mm-hmm. But also, people can buy bricks outside, and you can buy a red brick, a granite brick, or a bronze brick, and put some things on there or dedicate it to someone. And there's other things you could shop on our website. Then we just got that up during Corona, and it was good timing because we just updated the gift shop into using these things called computers. But so I was happy when we didn't have to write things down anymore. Mm. But since we had put it on Square, that made it a lot easier for us to put it up on a website. But we do have a lot of different fundraisers.
Okay. Well, if listeners want to visit the website, maybe make a donation, do you have the name of that website to give us?
Yeah, it's AEBM, like Amelia Earhart Birthplace Museum, mm-hmm. /Square, /Site, SITE. And they can email us too at aemuseum@att.net, or even call and make a donation on the phone, 913-367-4217.
All right, great. So you got to go do that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Amelia.
Okay.
Why this house? Why did this become the museum?
Well, she was born upstairs, and that it became, her home from when she was 3 to 12 years old. The schools were actually better here than they were in Kansas City at the time. And Kansas didn't become an official state until 1861, which happened to be the same time that her grandpa bought this home. And so she always called this her home, and she lived here, the longest period of time from when she was young. Mm-hmm. She would go to her parents' home in Kansas City during the summers, but be back over here during the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the rest of her life story? How did she become so famous?
Well, she was kind of a daring person, and her grandma said, her Amelia would kind of make her heart flutter, like, oh my gosh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But her grandma also said the most strenuous thing that she did was, roll around with her hula hoop and stuff like that. So her life story is just being on the edge of things. She always wanted to do things, and back then you were supposed to be wearing dresses as a girl, mm-hmm. and she was very active, and her parents, supported, make some longer pants for her because she just really wanted to be out there doing stuff and not sitting inside learning how to cook things for the men or, those kind of activities. But she moved around a lot, actually, after she left here with her family. And you wouldn't think of her childhood as being strained, but it was strained as she was growing up, and her parents didn't always get along, mm-hmm. and they split up for a time, and her dad struggled with alcoholism. And looking, and I think we do that a lot with celebrities. We think, oh, they got it made, mm-hmm. kind of thing. But the first plane she saw, it was the Wright brothers at a state fair, and she was not impressed at all. You know, I put something on there I was reading, and it said something like she thought a bunch of wires and stuff. She was just, she was
if it's
like,
sketchy, yeah, I wouldn't fly in that one.
she wasn't too thrilled. But she did a lot of different things. She thought she would be a social worker, go into medicine, but she also did poetry and photography. So she had her hands out in all different directions. But in 1920 is when she took an airplane ride. And after she did that, she was hooked. 1921, she was taking flying lessons, and with the named lady Nita Snook. And she was her flight instructor, and her first little crash was with Nita. And I was reading about Nita and Amelia because they had a lot of fun together. And Nita said, "I'm going to get married." And Amelia, "Oh, you should, you're going to have to give up flying. You can't do that." But Nita was all ready to kind of settle down.
Okay.
Yeah. But she met George Putnam, which was her publicist, in 1928. And they were looking for somebody to go on the airplane ride across the Atlantic. And
just riding, not flying.
Right, okay. Just riding. And another woman, she was going to go, but her family said, "No, that's too dangerous. Don't do that." So they were on the hunt, and they found Amelia, and she did it. And if everybody thinks back to that flight, you would have no idea who were the men that were flying the plane. And I'm not sure how they felt about that.
I might be a little bit jealous.
But Amelia referred to herself as a sack of potatoes, and that she was just sitting there, not doing much. She was keeping the flight log, and it took them 20 hours and 40 minutes. And that was the name of a book she wrote. And after George urged her and said, "Hey, you should write a book." And so George kind of took over her publicity after that. And he saw, wow, look at all the people that just love her. And I don't think that she was so thrilled about it, being in the public eye, but it also financed what she loved, and that was flying. But I forgot to tell you, the year before, she...
1927?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 1927, she set an altitude record. And you don't hear a lot about that either. Usually it kind of skims over that.
Yeah.
But she, having her feelings about the 1928 Atlantic flight where she wasn't flying, she did it herself, flying. And it was 15 hours.
So faster even than the first time.
But she had really bad weather, and things got icy. And she ended up landing on a farmer's area. And they'll talk about that she was, going up to his house, and he was kind of shocked about what's going on here.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah. But of course, word got out that she had landed, and then all the publicity started.
And when did she make that flight?
That was 1932.
Okay. It's just a couple of years afterwards.
Yeah. So it took her a little while, but I think it was important to her to say, I can fly that too. But she went around setting a lot of different records. And she was even in one of the gyrocopters and did a bunch of flights. And that one had over 50-some stops.
Wow.
So there was a lot. Someone had asked me in email what those stops were, and I couldn't find the information about that. But she kept pushing herself. And, we can jump forward to 1937. and she was, famous and had done a lot of things, but she said, I've got one last long flight in me, and then I'm going to go home and relax and be with family and friends.
That's so, I don't know what's the word I'm for. It kind of hurts to think about. Like, she's like, I've got one last flight. I'm like, yeah, it was. It shouldn't have been.
Yeah. And with her saying the last flight, she's talking about, I'm not going to do long distance flying. But her naming that too, makes you go, wow.
It's a little bit of, just like a hint.
Yeah.
And nobody knew.
Yeah. And it was important to her that she was going along the equator. And some people said, on her last dates she took off in July 2nd, 1937, that why didn't she go for Marshall Islands that was bigger?
I have wondered that. If it was such a small island, why that island?
Well, and I guess that the military had already been using that island. And they kind of had things that, set up for that. And that was my thoughts of why they, picked that. And she was supposed to be checking in periodically. And then they said, well, there was a mix-up maybe over what channel they were supposed to be on. But who knows really, what happened. But they were up there and no one saw them after that.
Well, let's backtrack just a little bit just
Sure.
in case listeners aren't as familiar with the story.
Yeah.
So she decided to go around the world.
Right.
And this is 1937. She's been going around the equator.
Yeah.
And where did she leave from?
She started in Oakland. And when she went to Hawaii, but on that flight, when she originally started, she had a crash in Hawaii. And they always wanted to keep those things out of the press about, any little thing that happened to the plane. They didn't want to, get that off. I guess that's kind of...
Well, she was a legend even in her own time.
Right.
You don't want to hear about your legend crashing.
That's right. That's true. Because I've had thoughts of, why didn't we know about that? But, even when people do things that are not quite up to par, we don't want other people to know that either.
Yeah.
So
she had a crash, and then she had to reschedule it.
Yeah.
And they decided to go in the opposite direction, right? And that was because of weather, is what I've read?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you wouldn't think that they would change their flight schedule like that, but back then they didn't have everything that we have now to...
All the technology,
Yeah. So they had to go with what they thought was best and not, just go, oh, no problem, we'll go up to this height and, bypass that storm or whatever. But, yeah, they had to do the things that in their gut and what they saw was best for the flight.
So she made it all the way around the world, and on the last day of her flight, where did she take off from?
Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she's heading for...
Howland Island.
Yeah. Tiny little... It's not even a mile, is it?
Yeah, it's really small.
And it's out in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And so from there, then she would land, theoretically, back in California?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, and you have to think, too, that her husband was already, waiting for her.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, it's a couple of days, and she would always check in with him constantly. But he's, already there waiting, and you can just kind of feel it, like, what's going on? Where is she at? I haven't heard from her. And they did a huge search for her. She knew Roosevelt and Hoover and, all sorts of people. And they hunted and spent millions of dollars trying to find her.
So She never made it to Howland.
No.
Just disappeared. There's a lot of theories about what happened to her, so what are some of the theories?
Well, some of them said that her and Fred decided to take off and be together and, you know, that kind of thing. But Fred had actually just, you know, got married, so I'm not sure that he was keen on that plan.
Mm-hmm.
Other people say that she was captured by the Japanese, prisoner of war, that she had cameras on the bottom of her plane and was taking pictures for the government. And I don't know that technology would have been that great back then.
Mm-hmm.
To be doing something like that. And they said that she came back as a different lady, and a lady that some author got in their mind, you know, this is the lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, quit bothering me, I'm not Amelia.
Yeah, actually I had heard that she ended up suing the guy, didn't she?
Yeah, she got really frustrated and wanted to be left alone.
I bet.
Yeah. So there's just all kinds of theories, and probably the things that you think of most is that she had a crash landing and that she just crashed
on land or in the ocean?
In the ocean.
Okay. Yeah, because there's two of them I've heard.
Yes.
That she crashed in the ocean and one that she crashed on land.
Right.
And that there were radio signals that people were picking up.
Right. Right. A lot of people, well, even when there was, oh, we saw Elvis, you know, kind of thing. You're like, did they really hear her? You know, it's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. Is that the museum's stance?
The museum says we don't have a stance.
Okay. So, real quick, let's swing back around to the 99. You mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's a group of female pilots that she formed.
Right.
And they now are in charge of the museum, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have a board of directors that we report to. And then there's an international group as well.
Okay.
And they have another board of directors. So there's a museum board of directors and the overall organization of the 99s. And Amelia was the first president. And they said they kept getting more and more women into the group until when they hit 99, they thought, hey, we should name it the 99s.
It works.
Yeah.
So they're still around. So other than the museum, what do they do?
They work with a lot of people that, well, I should say women, that want to become pilots. And as mentors, they give out scholarships. They do a lot of different things. And they also have a museum in Oklahoma as well.
Yeah, I just found that out not too long ago. My brother lives just outside Oklahoma City. And I was like, hey, did you know that you have the museum here? He's like, oh yeah, I've gone dozens of times. Like, you have not. Don't lie to me.
Yeah. So they're involved in a lot of things. And I'd like to watch them on Instagram a lot because they have some really great, you know, stories that go by. And their coordination of things is really fun to watch.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's all the questions I had. Is there anything else you want to tell us about?
Well, I'll tell you about my favorite thing that I showed you was the pencil sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady that made it has passed away, and she just really wanted it to be up in the museum. And it's just beautiful. And it's actually our Instagram profile picture.
Okay.
And I don't know, I was just drawn to that. It looks so real, like you could kind of see the feeling in it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's weird to say about a picture, but I just love it.
Well, you guys have a museum, you have an Instagram, that's cool. So what's the Instagram?
It's the Amelia Earhart Museum, and we also are on Facebook, and we just started Pinterest.
All right.
I usually say that wrong. I say Pinterest, but that's a lot of fun on there. That's just fun things to do.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and that'll be the end of the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
What an awesome interview that was with Heather. If you are near Kansas City, Atchison, Kansas, where the museum is located, it is only an hour away. I highly recommend going to check it out if you get the chance. And I will remind listeners that you ought to visit my website, homegrownkc.wordpress.com, and find me on social media, homegrownkc on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions for future episodes, please email me. That's homegrownkcpodcast@gmail.com. As always, thanks goes out to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City, and to my sister-in-law Sarah McCombs for designing the logo. And thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting me.
Seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. Thought I lost my nerve forever, and I know that it's now or never. Trying to see this through, tie loose ends up with a bow and start anew. We could talk through the nights on